Hi, good evening. I'm Sandeep, and you are watching The Weekender at 5. In today's news headlines, ex Cabinet Minister Simon Power to replace Kevin Kendrick at TVNZ. TVNZ has appointed former Cabinet Minister Simon Power as its new chief executive. Power joins the state owned broadcaster from Westpac, New Zealand, where he held multiple leadership positions, most recently as its interim chief executive. The TVNZ appointment follows the resignation of Chief Executive Kevin Kendrick in September after 9 years at the helm. In other major news of the today, which has dominated the headlines, the government has announced a suite of changes to bolster New Zealand's defenses against the Omicron variant of COVID 19, including pushing out changes to border rules until the end of February. The changes just announced by COVID response minister Chris Hipkins include the interval between the second dose and the booster shot reduced from 6 months to 4 months. Over 82% of vaccinated New Zealanders eligible for a booster by end of February 2022. The eligible border and health workers are required to get booster dose. Pre-departure test requirement to enter New Zealand from 72 hours to 48 hours before travel. Phased border reopening pushed out to the end of February. Temporary change to MIQ, the length of stay increased to 10 days for all travelers, with no self-isolation component. Everyone on an international flight with a positive case to be treated as a close contact, and all countries are removed from very high-risk category list. Most importantly, the rollout of pediatric doses of Pfizer vaccines for children aged between 5 to 11 years has been announced. The rollout will start from 17 January prior to school returning in 2022. Cabinet also confirms use of traffic light system to manage outbreak, and in the event of Omicron outbreak areas will move into red light settings. And vaccine rollout for children confirmed as announced earlier. So announcing the decision, vaccination for children are a choice for parents. Minister Hipkins said that he cannot speak strongly enough in support of them. So in light of today's major announcement around preparing New Zealand with the Omicron variant of COVID-19 virus, which they are saying is almost imminent to come back into the community, we are going to speak to a prominent ethnic media commentator, Mr. Ajay Vashisht. So welcome to our digital show, Ajay ji. कैसे हैं आप?
Sandeep ji, really good to join you on this very interesting day. Thank you very much for having me on the show. And also, ये हमारे freedom जो आते आते मुझे लगता जाने वाले हैं बस.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल. And from what if I have gathered correctly or not, you are probably crossing Auckland's border today. I think you were out of Auckland and you're returning back. Is that correct?
I'm coming back from the Waikato region, and luckily there was no police patrolling the borders and stopping people, and it's a free flow apart from the fact that it's Christmas traffic.
Right. When you say luckily, well, I don't know it is a sarcasm or not, because the understanding is that border should be guarded, and I think we here in Auckland, we are in red zone area, while Waikato is in orange area. So if there is no policing around in the borders and movement is free flowing, then what are your concerns? That are people following the rules while they are going through different border areas?
I think there is a degree of I guess faith one has in the system as an individual that most New Zealanders are willing to follow.
Fair enough. And just to add the word that Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has used many times, a high trust model. I think पिछले 2 साल से हम लोग देख रहे हैं, and we as a Kiwi Indians we agree with that as well. It is a quite high trust model that New Zealand is operating. But the only concern is that there is no incentivization for people who are following and complying with this high trust model, isn't it?
Yeah, so most trust works on a two-way avenue. You can't have trust working one way. Fair. And maybe the government, government is in between a rock and a hard place actually. ना करे तो मरे, करे तो मरे. वही हमारा जनता का भी हाल है. So we are all we want to follow the rules so that we are not spreading this thing around the community. But at the same time, we also liked the fact that we had a little bit of freedom and we were able to move around a little bit. I think most people are being very careful. By and large, everywhere I went, whether it is offices, shopping malls, in the Waikato area, even went into a few cafes and the local subway and all that. Everybody's very diligent about the vaccine pass and about making sure that you scan in.
Well, I think that is the key to success in New Zealand's response. I think that is one thing that we need to acknowledge, and everyone needs to acknowledge that government becomes successful in their COVID-19 response only because predominantly New Zealanders, they are a very law-abiding and complying a lot of people who have been following the rules right to the, I would say, walls, and that defines why New Zealand has been relatively successful in keeping the virus at the bay, or at least
Yeah.
reducing the number of infections. So that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. But now coming back to, as you said, the government has said that we are in a rock and hard place. But Ajayji, are you still connected, or have I lost you? Okay, well, it looks technology has failed us today, unfortunately. And probably we might have to wait for a couple of more minutes before we can connect him with again. And well, yes, coming back to the important part of today's announcement. Today's announcement has generated a huge amount of concern and anxiety. And government alone is not to be blamed about that. To be very clear about that, it is all about the arrival of Omicron virus on the scene. अगर हम गवर्नमेंट को देखें, गवर्नमेंट ने जब हम डेल्टा आउटब्रेक को मैनेज करते हुए डिफरेंट अलर्ट लेवल सिस्टम्स को हम क्रॉस करते हुए जब हम 3 दिसंबर को ट्रैफिक लाइट सिस्टम में जाने वाले थे, उससे कुछ दिनों पहले ही गवर्नमेंट ने ये अनाउंस किया था कि नाउ प्रोबब्ली द डेज ऑफ लॉकडाउन इज ओवर, वी विल नॉट बी गोइंग बैक इनटू लॉकडाउन अगेन. दैट वाज अ वेरी कॉन्फिडेंट अनाउंसमेंट बाय प्राइम मिनिस्टर एंड द गवर्नमेंट जस्ट अराउंड बिफोर 3rd of December. In what I can say now safely is a pre-Omicron variant days. So at that time, so most of the government policies emanating from that period and that time were resolute and confident that we will be going into traffic light system and we will not have to go back into the lockdowns. But what has happened now is after the arrival and the rampant spread of Omicron virus all around the world, the manner in which world is responding is really, really surprising and shocking. I'm not saying it is right or wrong, but what I'm saying is that countries have very quickly jumped back into the instinctive mode of lockdowns. The UK is almost in complete lockdown. Other countries in Europe, they are also connecting. They are also in the lockdown mode. And Ajayji, I can see that you are coming back and trying to connect with us. I do welcome you again. Thank you very much for that. And what I was talking and having a conversation with our audiences was about that Omicron has once again changed the scene. So yes. Omicron आने के बाद पूरी तरीके से फिजा बदल चुकी है कि कोविड-19 रिस्पांस की स्ट्रैटेजी बदल चुकी है. ओमिक्रॉन आने से पहले गवर्नमेंट ने बहुत सारी कॉन्फिडेंट अनाउंसमेंट्स करी थी, जैसे कि बॉर्डर रीओपनिंग की. बॉर्डर रीओपनिंग की अनाउंसमेंट है, ये हमारे जैसे माइग्रेंट कम्युनिटी और हमारी कीवी इंडियन कम्युनिटी के लिए एक बहुत ही इमोशनल और बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट अनाउंसमेंट थी. हम लोगों को 3 डेट्स दी गई थी, 17 जनवरी से लेकर 30 अप्रैल तक. 17 जनवरी को बताया गया था कि Kiwis returning back from Australia will be allowed to come and return in a MIQ free manner. So that was the beginning of reconnecting New Zealand with the rest of the world. That was supposed to culminate on 30th of April when all foreigners, vaccinated foreigners, would be allowed to come back to New Zealand without any MIQ. So हमारी जो ethnic community है, जो migrant community है, जो पिछले 2 साल से जिनकी who are I would say who are travel deprived, they were waiting this announcement and they have actually welcomed this announcement with a lot of fanfare right till before the arrival of Omicron. So as soon as Omicron re-arrived on the scene, suddenly there is a lot of anxiety all around. So Ajay ji, since I have connected you back, सबसे पहले मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाहूंगा कि do you agree that there is an anxiety now again that probably the whole reconnection with the rest of the world for New Zealand will be delayed and maybe extended?
I think that's a natural doubt and fear that most people will harbor for the simple reason that we are a law-abiding country, and most people follow what the government has been putting forward as a means of looking after us, our health, keeping the economy safe, and keeping it without overcharging or over stepping on the mark, which can affect our health system. So we all want that, but I think what we are unable to get to, and we need to get to, is that middle ground where you have to learn to live with this thing. I think it's something that I have heard time and again from my family, as well as other connections in other parts of the world, whether it be Australia, India, to some degree in UK, where they are really facing a very bad onslaught of Omicron, and in the USA. There is a feeling that, look, we need to save ourselves, but we also need to be able to get on with life a little bit as well. Otherwise, the cost is very high.
No, you are quite right, actually, and that's a very important observation, learning how to live with the virus. And
Yes.
another thing that probably, just because you have said so, another observation that comes to my mind is that probably New Zealand, the manner we are responding to COVID is, I think it is not paced with the responses of the other countries. What I'm trying to say is, जैसे जब हमारा डेल्टा आउटब्रेक हुआ था अगस्त में, और when New Zealand had to go back into one of the hardest lockdown and then 4 months of lockdown, उस समय अगर आप रिकॉल करेंगे तो बहुत सारे हमारे कम्युनिटी के लोग, हमारे न्यूजीलैंडर्स इन जनरल एज वेल, व्हेन दे वर टॉकिंग टू देयर कनेक्शंस ओवरसीज, उस समय पूरे दुनिया से शायद लॉकडाउन चला गया था या दुनिया खुल रही थी, दुनिया के उन देशों में जहां लॉकडाउन नहीं था, चाहे वो यूके हो, यूएस हो, ऑस्ट्रेलिया हो. और जब न्यूजीलैंड लॉकडाउन में गया तो हमारे कन्वर्सेशन में पीपल दे वर सरप्राइज्ड, दे सेड, "ओ माय गॉड, व्हाई न्यूजीलैंड इज गोइंग टू लॉकडाउन नाउ?" So
in fact, I remember the conversation where when a recent lockdown happened after one case, the WhatsApp group that I have with my Indian friends was like, "एक केस पे बंद कर दिया यार तुम लोगों ने."
बिल्कुल. Now, okay, fine. That's a WhatsApp conversation. But now coming back to the point that I was trying to make, Ajay ji, was that मुझे ऐसा लगा, I don't know, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that seeing the New Zealand, how New Zealand is pacing its response to, देखिए न्यूजीलैंड में कोविड हर बार सबसे लेट आता है, बिकॉज न्यूजीलैंड की जोग्राफिकल रिमोटनेस, हमारा जो ओशन का जो मोट है, दैट एडवांटेज ऑलवेज प्रोटेक्ट न्यूजीलैंड, एंड वी आर द लास्ट वन to face the onslaught of the virus, be it COVID-19 virus in its March 2020 रूप में, या be it Delta virus, या be it Omicron virus now as well. So I'm talking, what I'm trying to say is that New Zealand को जो एक advantage मिलता है, उसकी वजह से हमारे जो responses हैं वो different time zone में रहते हैं. तो उससे मुझे ये लग रहा है कि आज जब यूके और पूरी वर्ल्ड जब लॉकडाउन में जा रही है एकदम से बड़ी तेजी से, तो न्यूजीलैंड is still appearing to be confident. I don't know if government is bluffing or not, but they are appearing very confident. Our Minister of Health, our Ministry of Health and Director General, Mr. Ashley Bloomfield, he's sounding very confident. He said, look, our MIQ system will be able to hold the virus at the bay. So कहीं ऐसा नहीं हो, I want to ask your comment on that. ऐसा तो नहीं है कि हम अगले 3 महीने हम खींच लेंगे बिना लॉकडाउन के, and suddenly when world would have moved on from Omicron, we will see that New Zealand will go into lockdown maybe after 3 months. So what are your thoughts? How feasible is that?
So I don't think that the government has a playbook which is very different from the previous handling of the pandemic or handling of the COVID-19 variants. Our first response, even though the Prime Minister said, look, I might have dealt with it in a different way, I could have, or maybe I was too careful, or maybe there were other reasons behind it. They dealt with it in the same way, which was that sort of an elimination process. The strategy was elimination.
Right,
but
yes.
COVID as a kitanu or a germ or a virus, whatever you want to call it, it seems to not care about that.
Fair enough.
It seems to spread very fast. It seems to mutate faster, and then every mutation comes with its own different challenges. And to some degree, I find it like I don't want to belittle our efforts, but we have the same occurrence with a common flu as well. So if the vaccination and boosters are working, then find a way to live with it. Find a way to keep the death rate and the hospitalizations low, but also keep the people engaged and the economy moving, which is a very hard balance
which
for
is
us in particular, because I think we are in a cotton wool. वो cotton wool में बांध के रख देते हैं ना कि बड़ा नाजुक बच्चा है.
बिल्कुल 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 नहीं नहीं
So,
हम्म,
but at the same time, it's very hard to go against the grain of popular opinion, because nobody wants to be the one saying कि नहीं हमें सब कुछ खोल देना चाहिए. It doesn't matter what the cost is, because the health cost or the cost to life may be really high.
definitely, and that is the thing is that the way this whole contest of ideas is placed is there are only two options: either you are with the government or you are with the opposition. And yes, probably what you are trying to say, and probably I will also agree on that, that we need to find some middle ground on that, and find ways in which we can keep on moving. The current traffic light system is definitely is sending that kind of confidence that that's what government intends to do. The
Yeah.
only thing is, and probably that is my next question to you as well. The only thing is the concern of Omicron virus. जैसे ही ओमिक्रॉन वायरस वापस आया सीन में, हमने वैसे ही सुना कि डॉक्टर एशली ब्लूमफील्ड ने बोला कि पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ लॉकडाउन इज स्टिल देयर. That is an option within the traffic light system as well, and
Yes.
that basically alarms a lot of people, or creates a concern in the mind of a lot of people, especially the businesses, the small businesses who are
Yes.
struggling, to ask themselves that how likely is that a lockdown will return, and what will happen if a lockdown is again. Are you coming across that kind of questions in your acquaintances and from what you are observing?
Yeah. It's like, okay, are we? I think the concern is, oh, here we go again.
Right.
And because as citizens, whether we are model law-abiding citizens or whether we are those minority that want to question the government, either way, our options to actually do something about it are very limited. As an individual, or even as a business owner or an organization, or even as somebody that is largely on the same page as the government and wants to be protected, our options to say no, we can be protected, but we can also get on with life, are not options we are given. They are not on the table. You either go all the way with the lockdown, or you are seen as the dissenting voice.
Fair enough. Well, that's a very, very interesting observation, I would say. And probably what the point that you're trying to make is that the ideas that are coming, which are not in concurrence with the government, those ideas should also be entertained, isn't it? And the government and the decision makers should incorporate those ideas into their decision making.
Or weigh them up. I mean, obviously elimination is not working, because to use the words of some villain in Bollywood somewhere, I'm sure somebody would have said कि ये अपने काबू में नहीं आने वाला है.
Well, I think that's a very interesting observation, and I think on that interesting observation, Bollywood के comment से शायद हम इसको खत्म करते हैं. That's quite the right way of ending this interesting observation and interesting conversation. And thanks for joining us, Ajay ji. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy and hectic driving schedule to join us. We really appreciate that. And we hope to speak to you again in near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me on. Actually, driving schedule is only there because the Omicron abhi aaya nahi.
Bilkul. Well, again, that's a very positive way to end. So thank you very much. This is Sandeep, along with my production team here at Weekender at 5.